I'm Chelsey Brooke Cole, psychotherapist and bestselling author of If Only I'd Known: How to Outsmart Narcissists, Set Guilt-Free Boundaries, and Create Unshakable Self-Worth. In today's episode, you can hear us talk about a little bit of my story, how I got into specializing in narcissistic abuse, what a narcissist is, how to recognize one, and more importantly, how to set boundaries if you're dealing with one.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show, where we uncover the secrets of success and fulfillment in today's world. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga, and I'm absolutely thrilled to present to you one of the most captivating episodes that I think we've had in a very long while. Get ready to dive deep into the realms of healing and empowerment with none other than the brilliant Chelsey. Now, Chelsey, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, absolutely. The pleasure is all mine. Now, it's not just you we have on the show today. Who else is gracing us with their presence behind the scenes there?
That's right. Well, my cat Kit here just decided to join us
Oh,
right before we started recording. It's
bad.
his nap time.
Absolutely. Well, he's here with us now, so we might as well deal with that. Absolutely. And I really appreciate you for taking the time. It's fantastic to have you on the show. Could you maybe share with our viewers a bit about yourself and what actually led you to the world of psychotherapy and trauma healing?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Well, I always knew I wanted to be a therapist because I was always interested in understanding why people do what they do. I knew from a young age, probably like 8, that I wanted to be a therapist and help people. So I was one of those strange kids who knew from a young age what they wanted to do. So I followed that trajectory pretty, on point. I actually started college at 16 and graduated with my master's in counseling at 22 and immediately started working as a therapist, a typical overachiever, as you can imagine as well. But it was really when I started working with clients, I started noticing these patterns in their relationships, these patterns of they couldn't make sense of what was going on in their relationship. None of the regular relationship advice or communication strategies were working. They constantly felt criticized and like they were never enough. They kind of lost touch with their sense of reality. Like they would come into counseling and we would basically just be breaking down what happened week to week because the conversations they were having were so confusing and they were ruminating about them and they were feeling anxious and depressed and hypervigilant, really experiencing what PTSD, like what you might see from someone who went through a war zone or had some kind of crisis or trauma happening. And interestingly enough, at the same time, I was experiencing a lot of those symptoms in my own personal relationships. And so out of desperation for myself and for my own clients, I dove into what in the world could be going on. And that is really when I discovered narcissism, narcissistic abuse, complex trauma, relational trauma, and finally started making sense of those relationships that seemed so senseless. And ever since then, I've been fully specializing in narcissistic abuse, complex trauma, relational trauma, and helping people heal from these kinds of crazy making situations.
Fantastic. And Chelsey, thank you so much for taking us on that journey. You see, and I'm going to say this without much love and respect, when young girls are growing up, all they want to be is a princess. And they want to be either something they've watched on TV. What was around you that would have, really got you to say, I'm 8, I'm going to be a therapist. And at 16, you'd already, started college or graduating and things of that nature.
Yeah, I was basically partly born with an old soul. Like I've always been one of those people who's just way older than my age. But I also do think too it had to do with the environment that I was in. There was this cycle of push and pull in my family where promises would be made, promises would be broken. It's kind of I was set up to never feel good enough in relationships. Like I tried really hard. I think my personality is just to try my best and to kind of take a serious approach to things because I really want to, give meaning and purpose to life and really be helpful to others. But I do think there was that hint of almost needing to try to be perfect to survive because I felt like I was valued for what I did, not who I was. Now, I'll say my mom was an empath and a very kind, empathetic person and really helped me through that a lot. So I wasn't getting that from her. But my dad was more of a neglectful narcissist. And so I very much felt like I had to try to be good enough. And I think that really developed the perfectionistic kind of tendencies and set me on my path to success or to try to succeed very quickly.
Because yeah, and thank you so much for sharing that depth. Because now it really brings to the open what would have been the influence. Because environment matters. If you're going to be
Yeah.
planting a seed, the soil around it, if it's not fertile enough, it's not going to let the seed grow. Now, while you were growing, obviously this is what the situation was at home. Do you think all the other girls, your age group, or the girls you would have gone to school with, were maybe experiencing that same sort of situation, or was that very unique to just your family?
I don't think these situations are as unique as we might think. I would say a lot of my clients, most of them that I work with, have some kind of similar background where I think a lot of kids growing up, they don't feel understood, or there's traumas and things that we're going through that we don't necessarily realize are traumas until much later. I know for a lot of my clients, like they just don't understand what they've been through and what they've had to deal with until we really start diving into it and go, wow, you moved every 6 months or 2 years, when you were growing up. You had a sibling pass away. Your parent never understood you. You felt like no one cared about your feelings. Like those are serious things and those can be relational traumas. And so lots of people are kind of living with that and not realizing the impact that it's having on them. And that's what I think is so sad because people think, what's wrong with me? Why am I like this? But they're not looking at it. It's not you, it's what you've been through. It's what you've had to deal with. And so a lot of the healing work that I do with clients is unpacking that on top of most of the clients that are coming to me have some kind of narcissistic relationship in their life, whether it is a parent, sibling, boss, coworker, friend, spouse. That's usually what gets them into therapy because they're trying to make sense of these crazy making relationships. And then we dive in and realize maybe you've been dealing with some version of a toxic relationship throughout your life and just didn't realize it.
Absolutely. And I'm quite happy that while you were going through what you were going through and now starting to help other people, you started mirroring those same tendencies and seeing them prevalent in your life. Could it have been a situation where, I think in NLP they call it the reticular activated system, where if we start talking about the color orange or the color red, all you now start seeing is that same color. Now that these people are coming in, they're bringing out all of these issues and concerns, and they start really shining a light in what was actually happening in your life. Could that have been what happened there, or was that just something that was just a continuation of what you had to experience, for you to understand this as a therapist yourself?
Yeah, I think it was just a matter of timing because it's something that really revealed itself in layers over time, which it often does. Because narcissists can be your mother, your friend, your sister, your spouse. You don't initially know who you're dealing with. You assume that you're creating a healthy relationship or that it's your parent, it's your sibling. Of course, they want what's best for you. So we kind of have these, the way that we see this relationship, and then we have these other things over here that we kind of set aside that don't make sense with who we think this person is. And so that's why it takes time to understand what a narcissist is and to be able to recognize them in a relationship, because you're often trying to make sense of their criticisms, the gaslighting, the contempt, the stonewalling in light of who you think this person is. Like, this is your spouse or this is your parent. Surely they want what's best for you. Surely they're not, out to get you or being antagonistic on purpose. So I think for me and my clients, it was just a matter of kind of peeling back these layers over time, because I had known for a long time that there was something off about my relationships, never feeling good enough and constantly ruminating and having the same, issues come up over and over and over again in relationships isn't normal, at least in a healthy way. You should be able to talk things out, agree to disagree, move on. You can't do that with a narcissist. So I think it was just a matter of noticing that in my own relationships and with clients. And then it just became a passion of mine to help people with this.
Absolutely. I mean, so many people don't understand these things when they're happening, in the same way that fish do not see the water that they swim in, and neither can we see the air that we breathe. Now, for those that might not be familiar, could you maybe shed some light on what narcissistic abuse actually entails and how it affects individuals? Because so many people might just, like you said, that's my dad, that's my mom, that's my brother, that's my sister.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? And they cannot actually see that they've been maybe gaslit, like you say.
Yes, absolutely. And narcissism and gaslighting is such a buzzword these days, right? Like it's thrown around. And although I think it's good that we're talking about it, it's also unfortunate because, anything that is kind of oversaid or overshared, we can dilute it because now, oh, everyone's a narcissist and everyone's dealing with a narcissist. And that's not the case. So let's just start with what is a narcissist, and then we can move into what narcissistic abuse looks like. So narcissism is a personality trait that exists on a spectrum. It includes things like grandiosity, superficiality, superiority, entitlement, interpersonal exploitativeness, and a lack of empathy. So when you're dealing with a narcissist, you're dealing with someone who is quite antagonistic. They're high conflict. You find that in these relationships, issues kind of live on a Ferris wheel where they kind of circle around and then they come back. Nothing that you do, no communication strategy you use, no love language that you research, no attachment style, like nothing seems to make the relationship any better. This is a person who's quite rigid in their thinking. You feel like, am I going crazy here? Did I say that? Did that happen? You find yourself questioning your reality a lot, ruminating about conversations because you leave conversations feeling more confused than when you started them. Narcissists are also quite emotionally dysregulated. So they can be having a good day where maybe they got a promotion or someone flirted with them or they got extra attention or praise, and they come home and they're fairly pleasant. But then on another day, let's say someone else got the promotion, someone else was flirting with someone, or life is just not going the way they want, then they will appear sullen, depressed, or rageful, attack you as far as like verbally attacking you, being critical, defensive, and just all high conflict situations with these kinds of people. And so that's kind of just what a narcissist is in a nutshell.
Absolutely. That really encapsulates pretty much everyone, so to speak. But I was brought up to focus on the things that you can control. Obviously, you can't control the behaviors of somebody else, and neither can you control their actions and whatever it is that they do around you or things like that. Is there anything that a person can do in order, first of all, to then see that, wait a minute, my boundaries have probably been, crossed here, or I don't like people talking to me like this. This is not love. Or like Tina Turner, what's love got to do with this? They're telling you they love you, but they're hurting you at the same time. So is there any sort of advice that you can give to people, stuff that they can maybe control within themselves, in order for them to actually function? Because otherwise everybody is all out for themselves. So if you go out thinking everyone is narcissistic, then you wouldn't be able to function in this world.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to break that down, that everyone's a narcissist, because although narcissism does exist on a spectrum, so you can have someone who's a little narcissistic to highly narcissistic would be more like a malignant narcissist or more like a psychopath. This isn't something that everybody has. Narcissists are quite disagreeable. They're high conflict, they're out for themselves, they're vengeful, And most people go around the world trying to see the best. Most people, or a lot of people, try to be agreeable. They're empathetic. They try to understand other people's points of view. They aren't out to get people or out to control situations. They're trying to create genuine, meaningful relationships. And so when you run into a narcissist who is a person who thinks completely differently than you do, who they're not trying to be compassionate, they're not trying to be reasonable, they're trying to control situations, to control your emotions, to kind of control the reality in the room, then we don't know what to do with that, because that's not the way that we think. We kind of positively project our empathy and compassion onto them and assume that they're trying to be reasonable. It's just a miscommunication, or they're just stressed. Actually, this is the way that narcissists live their life, wanting to control other people and to control the reality in the room. So if you do feel like you're dealing with someone like this, boundaries are definitely essential. The first thing is understanding what you're dealing with, understanding how a narcissist thinks, which I cover a lot of that in my book and in my content. And once you kind of have an understanding of, okay, this is how a narcissist thinks, then you can move on to, okay, but what do I need to do to heal or to set boundaries? We can do something called the DEEP technique. It's an acronym that stands for don't defend, don't engage, don't explain, and don't personalize. Because a lot of times in these conversations, you'll find yourself baited or triggered into trying to just explain yourself incessantly or personalizing their criticisms. And the reality is, if you're dealing with a narcissist, it's not about you. It's about what's serving them best at the time. And so those are just a few things that we can do.
Absolutely. I quite like that because you just go deep within yourself. Is that what you mean? So that you don't have to worry, about what the other person is saying. So don't engage, don't, and don't
Yeah. So
allow
deep.
the whole, yeah, okay.
Yep. It is. It's really not going deep with the narcissist. So not defending yourself against their lies, not engaging with them, not over explaining yourself, because we often get caught in trying to do that, and not personalizing what the narcissist is saying about you, their criticisms or their gaslighting. So it's really about not going deep with the narcissist, because things that you say can and will often be used against you later.
Absolutely. And this is what you lay out in your book, If Only I'd Known. So maybe just walk us through what people can expect in between the covers of that. And yeah, maybe how people can get a hold of a copy.
Yeah, for sure. So in my book, I really wanted people to understand what narcissism is, what a narcissist is, what narcissistic abuse is, because again, it is such a buzzword. It's overused, but often misused. So I really dive into what are we exactly talking about here and uncover the layers of narcissistic abuse. And then it's really important for us to do our own healing work. If we have any attachment wounds or relational traumas or things that we haven't dealt with from our own childhood. So the second part of the book is really about helping you figure out how to heal those and how to set better boundaries. And then the last part of the book is really, how do I create a meaningful life, whether I do have to deal with a narcissist, or should I leave? Should I stay in this relationship if it's a spouse, or if you have that option? So how do I create a meaningful life even if I have to continue dealing with this person? So I cover all of that in my book.
Absolutely. And what would be the best way that people can get a hold of this book?
Yeah, so it's available anywhere books are sold. If any of this is resonating, then you can get the first chapter free at my website, chelseybrookecole.com.
Absolutely. I'll make sure that I put the links and the show notes there so that people can actually get a hold of it. Now, maybe somebody would have gotten a hold of this book, and obviously, yes, the book is there, but some of these things, like you said, most people come to you because they really want to make sense of the world around them. People come to us
Yeah.
because they want to make sense of the internet around them, and we just walk them through, and navigate that. Is there anything else that you've built, as a support network or something that people might then work together? Because I think if you're just dealing with this by yourself, you might actually just start thinking, it's probably just me going through this.
Right. Yes. That's so important. Community is such an important piece of this. So I have a really active Facebook and Instagram page. I also send out a free bi-monthly newsletter with over 40,000 subscribers. So that's a really great place to start if you're just kind of wanting to get your feet wet and see what's this whole thing about and what are other people's stories, and connect with other people who are going through something like this, or just see if you like resonate with what other people are going through and try to make sense of it. Then I would suggest going there as well. Like I said, Facebook, Instagram, or subscribing to my newsletter, which you can also find on my website.
Absolutely. Part of what you've mentioned, going deep would involve maybe, even if you're not around the person, maybe going through like your own self-care, your own self-compassion, just
Mm-hmm.
really validate yourself as a person, and things like that. And especially for people that are going through this, or the survivors of any sort of trauma, just
Mm-hmm.
so that they would validate themselves. Because you did mention that some of the times you now have these tendencies of obviously wanting to overachieve and really wanting to be perfect, whereas perfection is just a futile course, and the person that would have done that
Mm-hmm.
for you is not even within vicinity. Now, with the sort of practices that you now teach people, how do you people incorporate these into their daily lives without feeling very selfish, that, oh, wait a minute, I'm taking time to myself, what if these people need me?
Mm.
Yeah, it just how it works out.
Yeah, and I think that's such an important mindset shift that we have to make, is that taking care of ourselves isn't selfish, because we really can't take care of anybody else if we're not here, if we're not doing well. I know so many of my clients give and give and give, and then we talk about, well, what happens if you get sick? What happens if you run yourself so much that you can't keep going anymore? Then all of these things that you're trying to kind of juggle at once will fall. And so, really reframing that taking care of yourself isn't selfish, it is an extension of taking care of other people. Some of the practical ways that I encourage my clients to start doing that is to simply notice how you feel day to day. A lot of us are just going through our day and we don't even know how we feel, or we don't know the last time we ate, or have we taken a drink of water, like, do we get any exercise today? Have I taken a moment to just breathe and be mindful, or take a moment to look outside? So many of us, our days are just so busy, we're very disconnected from our internal experience. So I will encourage clients to set a reminder, or put a sticky note up on your computer or wherever you work, to say, how do I feel right now and what do I need? And if you're overwhelmed with the idea of self-care, then maybe starting somewhere like that is really simple, just to start to build that internal relationship with you and see how you are doing. When do you feel energized? When do you feel calm? When do you feel tired? And getting to know what you need throughout the day can be an easy place to start.
Absolutely. And it's not selfish, because I think
Yeah.
a lot of people should understand the biggest lesson that we learn when we're flying. What does the air hostess say?
Yeah.
Put your mask on first before you can actually be of any help to anybody else. And that's survival, in and of
Yes.
itself. But some people might just be saying, Chelsey, maybe this might be a mom who's now got kids, and she also has to deal with that. And then she has come from maybe parents that are like that, mother-in-law that's like that,
Mm-hmm.
father-in-law that's like that, and everyone around her is just like that. And she's now really presenting with that PTSD that you mentioned earlier on.
Mm-hmm.
You've faced, you know, a lot of these adversities, and you've triumphed. What actually keeps you motivated, especially in the toughest days? Because there's days
Mm-hmm.
when people just don't want to get out of bed. And how do you stay resilient in the face of all these
Mm-hmm.
challenges?
Mm-hmm. For me personally, it's about making a difference. It's always been about taking your pain and turning it into purpose, because I think that is the ultimate way that we take our power back. And I would say the same thing to anyone listening, and to any of my clients that I work with. It's we can't always, well, we can't control others. We can't always control the situations that we're in. We can't control the families we're born into, but we can decide what we do with it. If that means showing up differently, if it's showing up differently for your kids, and that's a lot of what motivates parents, is, yeah, there might be that initial struggle of, oh, do I have time for this? Do I have time for self-care? And it doesn't have to be a whole spa day. You know, it can be as simple as taking a moment and take a step away and breathe. It can be taking literally 5 minutes and journaling about your day. So it doesn't have to be huge things, but it can be something. And if you think about who do I want to show up as my best self for, then that may be a good place to start. That may be a good motivator, especially if you find yourself to be a helper and just doing something for you feels selfish initially.
Absolutely. And I think we've covered a lot of ground in this episode today.
Yeah.
And I know somebody who's probably watching this is just, looking for that one last bit, that they can walk away with, especially in this call. But if we would maybe direct that one last bit to young Chelsey, who was, say, 16 years of age and was just going, and just really trying to make sense of the world around her. If she would have maybe, in her search of excellence and pursuit of whatever she was looking for, came across a video like this today, what would you want to say to younger Chelsey?
That's such a great question. I would probably say you don't have to do it all. Because I think that I felt that way a lot. And I think I know my clients have felt that way too, that you really do feel like you have to take on the world and you have to do it all because maybe growing up that was true. Maybe you did have to take on more than you should have. But that's the thing, as adults, we get to choose. We get to choose what we take on, whose emotions we take on. So just knowing that you're not responsible for everyone else and their behaviors and what they choose to do. You're certainly never responsible for someone else's choice to abuse you or mistreat you. And we can't take responsibility for things we can't control. And that's why it's so important to know what you can and can't control, and to be really have radical acceptance around the fact that you can't control what somebody else chooses to do or say. You can only show up as your best self every day, or at least try to. And we have to acknowledge that we can't take responsibility for what someone else does. So being able to put that backpack down, because that weighs a lot more than just focusing on what we can do.
Oh, absolutely. And still talking about, the airline reference. Have you ever been on one of those cheap airlines? If you travel heavy with a big backpack, it costs a lot more,
Yes.
than you would have had. So travel light, people. And I really appreciate you bringing that to light. And I'm hoping our viewers would have gotten that. Now that, we've taken flight and everybody else is really excited about heading into the future, with a weight taken off their shoulder, because you have given people permission to be, do, and have a happier existence without succumbing to, environmental challenges and people that, exude or, have narcissistic sort of tendencies around them. What can people
Mm-hmm.
expect from you in the future, now that they are
Mm.
all aboard and they want to know what else they can learn from you and how they can continue on this path, especially with you and your community or your business?
Yeah. Well, I'm always looking into putting out content that most resonates with people. So I'm always happy to hear suggestions, comments, your questions. That's often what I craft my social media and my blogs and articles on, is what's going to be most helpful. So if anybody has specific questions, please feel free to reach out. And I'm also looking into doing workshops and courses and things like that to kind of go alongside the book. And I do offer therapy and coaching as well on an individual basis. So if that's something you think you want to dive into a bit more, I'm happy to do that as well.
Fantastic. And thank you so much for opening those doors, for our esteemed viewers, and hopefully people will take you up on all those offers, because I think so many of us, like we said, are going through our go-throughs and we don't quite know how to, name them. And if you can't name it, you can't tame it. So I think if
Yeah.
you join communities and be part of what's happening in the world there, you'll be able to support, like we mentioned earlier on, the reticular activated system would now be seeing that, wait a minute, that's not supposed to be it. And then you can actually put up those boundaries, as Chelsey has suggested. And there you have it, folks. A truly enlightening conversation with a remarkable Chelsey Brooke Cole. And if you found today's discussion as insightful as I did, be sure to catch the replay and share it with your friends and family. If anything, there's a cat in this video, so it is technically a cat video. All right, so you can share that with those people that are actually going through stuff, and then not realizing that it's actually to their own detriment. And remember, healing is actually a journey, and resources like Chelsea's book and community are there for people like yourself, and you are never going to be alone. I will put the links to both of those resources in the show notes below. And while you're at it, just subscribe to the show for more empowering insights and highlights on how to live your best lives. And officially, we now do cat videos too. So share this with all those cat lovers out there, because Kit made an appearance. Until next time, keep thriving and spreading the light, and take good care of yourself. Bye for now.